morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you here. So we have a very full agenda today. So let's get started with the roll call.
All right. Councilmember McOsker,
Here.
Councilmember Padilla,
Present.
Councilmember Soto Martinez. Here.
Thank you very much. So I am going to recommend members, and for folks in the public, I'm going to recommend that we take items 1 through 9. So each item 1 through 9 and 11 and 14 and 15 on consent. That would hold items 10, 12, 16, and 13 for discussion, and I want to do it in that order, 10, 12, 16, and 13. So as you know, as you can hear, very full agenda. And so let's get right into public comment. I think we have a number of speakers who have signed up for public comment. I will call you out one by one, and please come to the podium and remind us of what items you want to speak on. I'll call Ada Murillo first. Ada Murillo. Oh, hello. If you could let me know what item you'd like to speak on.
I signed up for so many, I forgot what it was.
Okay. So are you signing up for items on the agenda?
Yes, 10.
Yes.
Since we're holding the other ones, 10, 11, 16.
Okay, so for multiple items, why don't you take 2 minutes, please?
For multiple items. Okay. So my name is Ada Murillo, and I am the Vice President for ASME Local 3090. And I am here for making sure that we help our civilian workforce. I sit on the Targeted Local Hire program. I'm also very aware of our civilian vacancies within the city and the impact. I have been a strong advocate for hiring more civilian personnel in the Los Angeles Police Department and getting the sworn personnel that are full duty out into the streets. And I think that it would be a good impact doing so that we can hire the positions that are needed within the city, specifically for police service representatives. The city is so underserved, not having the accurate dispatching that the city needs. Just like they need public safety out in the streets, they need somebody to answer those calls. They're the first line, the first contact. And we need the city, as far as a targeted local hire is concerned, to try to expedite the hiring process. And if the targeted local hire is going to be the way that we're going to do it, and it's going to be the fastest and the most efficient for meeting and fulfilling our vacancies, then I would ask that you please look into those matters. Look into, please, the audits. The audits need to be very, very specific. It just can't be open. We need to know exactly where money is going allocated, where positions are being allocated, and who is sitting in those positions. So we cannot just give a blanket check to the different departments and say this is where you're going to hire. We need to know who is there so that we can better serve our constituents, your constituents, my members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I made a mistake. If you have more than 2 items, you actually get 3 minutes. You'd be welcome to go for another minute, or we can thank you for your comment. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that, Ms. Murillo. I'll call up next Angel Dominguez.
Hello, I'm Angel Dominguez, and I'm speaking in support of item number 14 in general public comment.
Okay, then 2 minutes, please.
Like I stated, my name is Angel Dominguez. I work at Flying Food near LAX. My company makes food for airlines, and I'm a proud member of Unite Here Local 11. I was one of 150 workers who went on strike for 26 days in April, and we are still fighting for a fair contract that provides the wages we could live in Los Angeles. Since 2020, we have filed 7 wage theft complaints against Flying Food Group and its subcontractors. Workers only started to get some back pay for some of these complaints this year. The city has helped workers from temp agencies who were owed money for the time they worked as temps at Flying Food, but most permanent workers who went out on strike like me have yet to receive any back pay for living wage violations. When Flying Food does not pay for workers, we have pay for workers what we have earned, it becomes impossible to survive in LA. How can we expect our company to move wages forward when they haven't even made payments for the ones that they require to make payments for? That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Next speaker is Ernesto Hidalgo. Ernesto Hidalgo. And remind us of what items you're going to speak on.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Council members. Ernesto Hidalgo, Policy Director with the LA Worker Center Network. Happy to be here and greet you this morning. We represent 7 worker centers that focus on ununionized workers in low-wage industries in Los Angeles. I'm here for item 14 and general public comment. Thank
2
you.
minutes. Thank you.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
And we are here to support motion number 14 today. And 2 of our worker centers also submitted letters of support online, and one of them asked us to read a statement today, which is what I'll do. The Filipino Worker Center is a grassroots nonprofit that organizes, educates, and mobilizes worker and immigrant Filipino communities. PWC members provide critical services, providing in-home care that allows our Los Angeles seniors to age with dignity in their own communities. At PWC, we support caregivers not only as a growing part of the Filipino community, but also as a critical part of the Los Angeles healthcare system. Despite a long and powerful history of labor organizing, Los Angeles is still the wage theft capital of the country. And we see this injustice too often in our work with home workers. Workers in the caregiving industry will sometimes work over 24-hour shifts for well below minimum wage with no overtime. And we at PWC support this motion as an important step towards ending wage theft. On behalf of Filipino caregivers, we want to thank Chair McCosker for beginning this process towards more proactive labor enforcement and preventing wage theft in our communities. We look forward to working with the council on the outcomes of this motion and on making Los Angeles a city that takes care of all of its workers. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your time. Next speaker is Jessica Durham, and then after Jessica will be Olga Tirado. So Jessica, remind us of what you're going to speak on. And then Olga.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jessica Durham with the Los Angeles Alliance for New Economy. I'm speaking on also in support of item 14 and general public comment. So thank you, Councilmember McCosker, for introducing this motion. We want to make sure the mayor and the budget find the resources to ensure that workers' rights are upheld and that employers who break the law are held accountable. We also need resources for more robust public outreach to make sure that workers know their rights and aren't afraid to come forward. As you heard from Angel from Flying Foods, from our friends at the LA Worker Center Network, it can take years for claims to be investigated, and workers can't wait that long. We want to make sure that employers like Flying Food Group do not get away with wage theft, and that workers do not have to wait years for wage justice. In LA, we have some of the strongest wage laws and worker protections in the nation, but without enforcement, what good is it, right? So let's make sure that the city has all the tools and resources it needs to prosecute violators to the fullest extent so that LA is no longer the wage theft capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Olga Tirado, and then Armando Gudino. And remind us of what you're going to speak on, and I'll give you your minutes.
Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Olga Tirado. Estoy hablando en apoyo del artículo número 14. Buenos días, mi nombre es Olga Tirado. Estoy hablando en apoyo del artículo 14 y en el comentario del público general.
I'm actually supporting the article number 14.
Mi nombre es Olga Tirado y trabajo para Flying Food cerca de LEX.
My name is Olga Tirado and I work with repite su trabajo, por favor?
Flying Food.
For Flying Food close to LAX.
Mi compañía prepara alimentos para la aerolínea y soy un orgulloso miembro de Unite Local 11.
My company prepares the food for LAX and I am a proud member.
Fui uno de los 150 trabajadores que salieron a la huelga durante 26 días en abril.
I am one of the members who went to the manifestations on the rail, one of the 150 members.
Todavía estamos luchando por un contrato justo que proporcione salarios con los que podamos vivir en Los Ángeles.
We are still fighting for a fair contract that can actually give us a better way to live here in Los Angeles.
En nuestra experiencia como trabajadores de Flying Food Group, la ciudad ha sido demasiado lenta y los trabajadores están sufriendo.
Working with this company of Flying Food Group, actually the workers are still suffering.
Los trabajadores de Flying Food presentaron quejas en julio y el del 2020 y tuvimos que esperar 3 años para que la oficina de administración
We have presented complaints on July of 2020, and we are still waiting 3 years for the office to respond.
Flying Food Group cumplirá con para que obligar a Flying Food a
Extend your
cumplir
time,
con la
please.
ley.
I'm s-
Es demasiado largo el tiempo.
Disculpen.
Excuse me, can we make sure that when we're doing the translation that we just double the time period? I want to make sure that she's allowed to.
Queremos
Provide all our
asegurarnos de que
comments.
como vamos a hacer la traducción pueda tener el doble de tiempo para poder dar su comentario. Me dijo, discúlpeme.
Para que tuvimos que esperar 3 años para que la oficina de administración de contratos obligara a Flying Food a cumplir la ley.
We are still waiting 3 years for the contract administration to give us an answer.
Eso es demasiado largo.
That's a long time.
Mientras tanto, hemos tenido que presentar otras denuncias salariales contra Flying Food.
Meanwhile, we are still presenting more complaints on wages to Flying Food
Y su contratista, alegando que ha seguido rompiendo la ley.
and to their contractors, just to emphasize that they are still breaking the laws.
Todavía estamos esperando que la ciudad investigue estas quejas.
We are still waiting for the city to investigate these complaints.
No podemos esperar otros 3 años para que la ciudad responsabilice a Flying Food Group por los robos de salario.
We cannot wait 3 more years for actually give the city the responsibility to Fly Foods to actually answer for these type of complaints.
Gracias por su atención.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next speaker is Armando Godino, and then Molly Rhodes.
Good morning. Armando Gudino with Los Angeles Workers Center Network, Executive Director on item 14. And here in support of item 14, we at the LA Worker Center Network, as my colleague earlier shared, represent 7 worker centers as well as an academic institution at UCLA Labor Center and a legal services organization, Betsadec Legal Services. And we are very encouraged by this committee's effort to find ways to better support low-wage workers. We represent thousands of low-wage workers in various industries, various communities, various cultures, and we want to invite this committee and the City Council in general to continue working on finding better ways to support these communities and work with the LA Worker Center Network, who has a large body of experts who can contribute to this in a positive way. And I leave you with one final comment that in total, wage theft in Los Angeles alone costs local and state governments anywhere between 103 and 153 million dollars annually in lost tax revenue. So we are not only helping low-wage workers and the families that they represent, but the city in collecting as much as $150 million in tax revenue that's lost annually. Thank you very much. We welcome the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Molly Rhodes.
Good morning. I wanted to, good morning, Chair, and welcome to Ms. Padilla to your first meeting. It's good to see you.
Just remind me what items?
1, 8, 13, and 16 kind of intertwined.
3 minutes then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On item 1, on the unfreezing of positions, we just want to say yay, liberate the positions. On item 16, the vacancy report, it doesn't have the level of position and department detail that we all really need to understand where to solve the problems, really. So we need position level and by department data. We've been trying to get it for years, so I hope that this committee can move that forward. We do get position authority lists up the street at the County. It's really easy. It's built into their payroll. They give it to us monthly. They give it to us on request. So yeah. And then HRP related to that, we're in the difficult situation of tracking positions because payroll was outsourced in the 2000s. So everything related to HRP, ITA's been an uphill battle trying to bring that back in. And we hope the controller's audit will acknowledge the outsourcing that caused the problem in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
I don't know if I said I'm a research and policy analyst for SCIU 721. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have Susan Rocha. Susan Rocha is the next speaker. Going once, going twice. And then I'll come back to Susan just in case, but the next speaker then is Donald Harlan. And if you could remind us what items you're going to speak on.
Hi, I'm Donald Harlan. I'd like to speak on 1, 3, 4, 5, 10, and 16 in general comment.
3 minutes, please.
First of all, agenda item number 10, the hiring program. I'm concerned about the hiring practices of the city. I think that there's a big problem here. They're hiring from some of the people from some of the largest financial scandals in world history. And that there needs to be better vetting for some of the companies and the people you're hiring. You're hiring so many criminals at one time that law enforcement wouldn't even be able to keep up to put them all in jail if they were trying to catch them all. And you're hiring from people that are from countries that don't believe in corporal punishment for financial crimes. So they're celebrated as heroes in their country when they commit a financial crime or scandal over here or illegally sell real estate. And you guys are hiring those kinds of people. There's foreign development funds all over the world trying to get in on your scam. I see that there's a London development fund that you guys are illegally selling real estate to, and that you need to do better vetting for the people you're hiring. Number 16, the vacancy rates in city departments. I'm concerned about the lateral hiring in law enforcement. I don't believe that imposter Karen Bass should be appointing anybody in LAPD whatsoever. I'm directing the city workers and the city council members to block the mayor from any appointments in law enforcement. The mayor is not to be appointing people to LAPD. They are not to be hiring people like that. The mayor is not to appoint anybody into LAPD. I'm concerned about they're trying to hire people that want to take advantage of your new market tax notes for foreign development. And that absolutely needs to be stopped because those people don't believe in paying and they don't believe in punishment for financial crimes. And agenda item number 1 is the most important one that absolutely needs to be stopped is no. You're not to unfreeze the fiscal year budget for 2023-24. There's nobody in the city with authority to spend those tax funds for that illegal real estate you developed. That's my property still, and that's my money. And it's going to stay that way until you guys pay me. I don't want you guys hiring city attorneys. What's the difference between a city attorney and a confidential attorney? Why don't you guys say
that concludes your time. I'm going to ask if Susan Rocha is here. If not, are there any other speakers on the queue? Okay, no more speakers on the queue. Then we can move to the consent agenda and then to the discussion agenda. I want to remind my members and the public that these are the items on the consent agenda. Item 1, the recommendation is to approve the CAO report and resolution. Items 2, 3, and 4 are to also approve the CAO recommendations. Item 5, is to approve the department recommendation. Item 6 is to approve the CAO recommendations. 7 is to approve the adopted budget recommendation. 8 is to concur with Public Safety Committee and note and file the adopted budget recommendation. 9 is to approve the adopted budget recommendation. Items 11 and 14 are to approve the motions. And item 15 is to approve the department's exemption request. If the members are ready, Mr. Clerk, please tally the vote on these items.
Councilmember Cosco, sorry, can I pull 7 for a separate vote, please?
You may indeed. Item 7 is pulled. Councilmember Padilla, any items to pull?
No, not today.
Okay, so then items 1 through 6, 8, 9, 11, 14, and 15 are before us on the consent agenda.
Very good. Councilmember McOsker,
Yes.
Councilmember Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Then we will go to item 7 next, which is pulled, and this is to adopt the budget recommendations relative to addressing barriers to hiring lateral transfers of personnel employed by law enforcement external to the City of Los Angeles. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, can you call the roll, Mr. Clerk?
Very good. Councilmember McOsker,
Yes.
Councilmember Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez.
No.
Thank you very much. That item is approved. Then we will move to item 10. I will take a couple of the items out of order, one of the items out of order, but we'll move to 10 now. Thank you very much, speakers, for coming. Go ahead and read that into the record.
Item 10, Personnel Department reports in response to budget recommendation relative to impediments that delay the hiring of individuals to the targeted hire program.
Thank you so much. We're joined by staff from the Personnel Department. Why don't you go ahead and make a brief presentation to us, and we'll get into the discussion.
Good morning, council members. My name is Louis Fernandez with the Personnel Department. I'm joined today by Cynthia Pletes, also with the Personnel Department. As instructed by council during the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget hearings and deliberations, the Personnel Department has continued to report back on the number of hires made through the Targeted Local Hire Program and Bridge to Jobs Program compared to the hires made through the traditional civil service process. So during the reporting period from May 1st through May 31st, 2023, a total of 43 hires were made from the 11 TLH classifications through the TLH program, while there were 2 hires made through the traditional civil service process. So this equates to 96% of hires made in the reporting period coming through the TLH program. The most widely used classification continues to be office trainee with 17 hires, followed by vocational worker maintenance laborer with 15 hires, and vocational worker gardener caretaker with 5 hires. The top user departments during this period were transportation with 14 hires, animal services with 6 hires, and police and recreation and parks with 5 hires each. During this reporting period, a total of 14 hires were made through the 6 Bridge to Jobs classifications through the Bridge program, while there were 0 hires made through the traditional civil service process. So this equates to 100% of hires made in this reporting period coming through the Bridge to Jobs program. The classifications used during this reporting period are accounting clerk, communications information representative, community services representative, and field engineering aide. The user departments during this period were alley sanitation with 7 hires, library with 5 hires, and Lacers and Public Works Bureau of Street Services with 1 hire each. During the reporting period from June 1st through June 30th, 2023, a total of 30 hires were made from the 11 TLH classifications through the TLH program, while there were 0 hires made through the traditional civil service process. So this equates to 100% of hires made in this reporting period coming through the TLH program. The most widely used classification continued to be office trainee with 19 hires, followed by vocational worker maintenance laborer with 9 hires, and vocational worker warehouse and toolroom worker with 2 hires. The top user departments during this period were building and safety and public works street services with 9 hires each. During this period, a total of 2 hires were made through the 6 Bridge to Jobs classifications through the Bridge program, while there were 0 hires made through the traditional civil service process. Again, this equates to 100% of hires made in this reporting period coming through the Bridge to Jobs program. The classifications used during this reporting period were accounting clerk and electrical craft helper. The user departments during this period were airports and public works street lighting. Currently, the TLH program has 92 active referral requests with approximately 30 pending offers, and the Bridge to Jobs program currently has 31 active referral requests with approximately 27 pending hires. Therefore, we expect the percentage of TLH and bridge hires to continue to make up most of all the hires in these classifications. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Can you do two things for me? One, could you scoot that screen over? I just feel so, I really want to see you while
Okay,
you're
sure.
speaking.
Let's go this way.
Yeah, I just think, I feel like it's so impersonal.
Better?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
Go on.
secondly, could you give just a brief overview of what TLH is in layperson's terms?
Sure. Yeah. The Target Local Hire Program is an alternative pathway to hire individuals to civil service classifications.
Yeah.
And we target those with barriers to employment.
Uh-huh.
So there's 9 target categories ranging from individuals from areas of high poverty and high unemployment, those that people experiencing homelessness, people with criminal backgrounds, and a number of other targeted categories. So the effort is to have those individuals recruited through our workforce centers, through referral agencies, our partner agencies,
Right.
have them vet those individuals, and then bring them onto civil service careers, and where they're provided on-the-job training. They're provided full benefits as any typical regular city employee.
So the way I simplify it a little bit, it might be oversimplification. It's kind of like an apprenticeship program for the city. You come aboard, and then during your apprenticeship period, or during that period of time, you have the opportunity to work yourself into full civil service. And it's something that we do in partnership with labor and management. I have a few questions before I turn to my members. When we put together the lists, the TLH lists, are we sharing the list? Well, let me back up and ask a different question, but I'll get to the second question. What would you say the number of departments are throughout the city that are actually taking advantage of the TLH program, participating in TLH, actively recruiting and then hiring off of TLH? Overall, I mean, I see the numbers of who's hired, but who's participating?
At this point, Mr. Councilmember, my name is Cynthia Fletes with the Personnel Department. At this point, we do have about 35 actively participating city departments across the city.
Mm-hmm. Do we have, when, let's say, very active department, pick one, you pick one because I'm not going to guess wrong, puts together a list. Are we sharing that list between those 35 departments? In other words, are departments relying on their lists? And I do hear from time to time that we are not, like a list that goes to airport is not necessarily going to sanitation, is not necessarily going to rec and parks.
Thank you for that question. At the time that a list of candidates is referred to a city department, that list is held exclusively for the department for 30 days. After 30 days, candidates referred to that department become available to other city departments for hiring consideration.
Becomes available or is automatically shared?
It's not automatically shared, they become available. So they go back to the candidate pool and are eligible for other city departments who have a need that matches the candidate's interest as stated on their application.
So in my hypothetical, if airport has a list and it's held exclusively for 30 days, at the 31st day, it's not pushed out to Rec and Parks, for example. Rec and Parks has to know in this hypothetical that it exists and go get it?
In that hypothetical, Rec and Parks would then submit a request to the Personnel Department for candidates, and then all candidates in the candidate pool at that time are eligible for referral to Rec and Parks. So it wouldn't necessarily be the same exact candidates that were made available to LAWA, but it would be anybody in the candidate pool at that time.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't basically push the list out to every participating department in TLH? Is there a reason why we wouldn't do that?
The main reason would be to give all candidates in the candidate pool an equitable opportunity to be referred to the city department at the time that a vacancy exists, so as to ensure that everybody in the candidate pool has an equal chance of being randomly selected at that time.
And not preferring TLHs is what you're saying?
It would be through to the TLH program. So everybody in the TLH program would have an equal chance of being selected at the time that a vacancy exists.
Okay, so would it make sense then to have sort of the citywide TLH list available to everyone and have folks actually know it exists and know who's on it?
Yes, there is a citywide TLH eligible list, if you will. We refer to it as our candidate pool, and all city departments are aware that this is available to them.
Okay, thank you. Do you see as we're going through the TLH program, are there, fixes or improvements that one can imagine that you all have been thinking through and working on to make the TLH program or the bridge program more readily available and used by the employer?
Yes, absolutely. Our decision-making body, the Targeted Local Hire Working Group, is constantly looking at ways to refine the program and improve the program, one of which includes finding ways to ensure that candidates in this candidate pool, or the TLH list, if you will, that have never been referred to a city department receive an opportunity to be referred. There are a number of items that will be going before the working group for their consideration at their next meeting.
Good. Particularly around this issue of making sure that everyone has access to the list?
Correct.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? Yes.
I'm curious, where are the workforce centers that you recruit from located?
We are currently working with the 16 Worksource centers across the city. So it's all Worksource centers that are in the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, and thank you. Also, I'm curious, do you track the employees by gender? Do we know how many of them were men versus women that actually get the job?
We do have demographics on both the candidate pool as well as TLH hires, so the individuals that are actually hired through the program, and we are happy to share those with your office.
Okay, thank you. End of my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember?
Mostly comments. If with the blessing of the chair, thank you for the report. It's good to see, at least what we're doing each month, and for putting a lot of focus on this on our chair here. Just for personally for me, it's a little challenging to track like the progress and the amount of openings. And so for the reports, if it's possible to get the total number of TLH openings for each classification. I'm looking at this report. Administrative clerk, we got 19 people hired. That's great, but it would be good to know how many of those positions exist in the city, just so we can know how many are left, so we can be able to focus a little more. And then also at the end of that column to put the year-to-date total hires. I don't know if we track it by fiscal year or by calendar year, but to understand that a little better. And then also in the third page of this report, very similar. I think having those additional information, the TLH eligible openings and the year-to-date total hires will give us, at least me and probably my colleagues, an ability to focus in on certain departments. I see a lot of zeros here, and having the year-to-date totals would help us understand which departments have been consistently putting up zeros. There we can have more attention to those departments, and a lot of us do talk to them and try to put a little heat on that, because I do think there's just so many openings. We'll talk about the vacancies later, but just say if those details will be in there, it'd be very helpful for me at least.
That's great.
Yeah.
So just so I understand, and I completely agree, and you have my blessing. I think you asked for a blessing.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
So we would put on the first chart the vacancy rate in these classifications, or the not the vacancy
the raw
rate,
number,
but the raw number of available positions on this chart on the first page of your report. And then on the third page, we would add sort of a cumulative year to date, or like a rolling, maybe a rolling 12 months, if that's possible. So without objection, that will be part of our direction when we receive and file. Any other comments?
Nope.
Thanks, that's very helpful. So the recommendation is receive and file the department's reports. Mr. Clerk, can you read the roll?
Very good. Councilmember McOsker?
Yes.
Councilmember Padilla?
Yes.
And Councilmember Soto Martinez?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the report. And thanks for moving that screen. It was good to see you. We'll then move to item number 12. Mr. Clerk, can you read the item into the record?
Yes. Item 12, Personnel Department report relative to efficiencies in the hiring process identified during the Aspire to Hire workshop and related matters.
Thank you very much. I think we're joined by CIO and personnel. If you could identify yourself and give us a brief report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Rivera. I'm with the Personnel Department.
Vince Cordero, also with the Personnel Department.
Do we have is CIO going to present on this? If not, that's fine. We can go with your prepared report. You just give us an overview and then we'll go to questions.
Hello, everyone. Since the Aspire to Hire meeting, Personnel Department has implemented various innovations. Before we go into some of the specifics, I do want to go over some of the sheer numbers so you guys can see how these innovations have
Would you mind if I interrupted you briefly and just if you just gave us just a brief chronology of the Aspire to Hire program and just when did it start and what it is, but in the briefest of terms.
Sure. We met well, a little over a year ago to go over with the innovations that I think many of you are aware of. Those innovations were targeted at increasing, or I guess I could say adding efficiencies to the selection process, ensuring quality still of the candidates, and identifying vacancies and seeing strategically how we can address those vacancies. Through those innovations, we've made some significant changes, and I believe we've added some significant efficiencies as well. To give you an example of our numbers, this past fiscal year, we received over 75,000 applications, which is significantly more than we have over the past couple of years. We opened up 169 exams. These are unique exams. We've added 59 exams to our intermittent continuous exams, and I can go into the specifics, but those are essentially exams that are continually open so that we can continually get applicants throughout the filing period. We tested over 18,000 candidates through online testing. We placed approximately 13,000 candidates on an eligible list. 77% of departments have been satisfied overall with the eligible list. 90% of our candidates have indicated a satisfaction with the online testing process. Where we've seen significant differences or efficiencies are the number of days in which it takes to establish a list. We've reduced that by about 55 days, so it's almost 2 months that we've reduced from the time a bulletin opens to the list being established. This includes exams that are single test parts and multi-test parts. Some of the innovations that we've done to get this number down has been removing test parts wherever necessary. Some of our exams, as you may be aware, consist of multiple tests, maybe a multiple choice test and a performance test. So we've eliminated some of those test parts. We've developed the test quicker by reducing the number of items potentially on a test, reducing the number of meetings required to develop these tests. Once we develop a test and administer it, before we would have days on meetings to go over the analysis of that, we've been able to remove those meetings as well. And those are some of the significant changes that we've done to reduce the time it takes to establish a list by almost 2 months. And we're excited to see what the future brings in terms of getting that number down even further.
Thank you. Are you ready for questions then or discussion?
Sure.
Thank you very much. I have a few and then I'll turn to my vice chair. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we're going to be looking at specific vacancy rates next. But what is your sense? Are these innovations that are coming out of the Aspire program putting a dent in our vacancy rates?
I would say for sure. To give you an example, and I know we're going to go over some of these vacancy numbers, but there's a.
Can you stop for 1 second, Mr. Harlan? Do not distract. You. Do not distract the speakers. Do not distract me. You will be asked to leave if you do it again. Go ahead.
So going back to the specific numbers, a lot of the vacancies are actually coming from a handful of job classifications. Give you an example, and I won't speak about the sworn, but like management analysts, there's about 350 vacancies specific for that job classification. We just opened up that exam, and for the first time, we made that examination open and promotional. We also removed the test part from there so we can establish the list that much quicker. That exam is in progress. I won't speak on too much of the details, but I can tell you that we've received significantly more applicants for that exam than ever before, and we are going to complete that exam significantly quicker than we would have by simply removing one of the test parts. Accounting clerk, admin clerk, management assistant, let me go through some of these. RCTO, refuse collection truck operator, motor sweeper operator, plumber, electrician. Some of these comprise about 3,000 vacancies. of the majority that you see. And we have either an eligible list that we just completed or will be completing for most of these job classifications. So there's about 25 or so classifications that are comprising over a third of these vacancies. And we've strategically targeted these classes to make that significant dent on the vacancies.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. I appreciate the leadership of the department, particularly Dana Brown, and putting this all together. And I realize this is a joint labor management effort, so I appreciate that particularly. Are we putting a dent in the issue? Are we thinking through the issue of when we have internal promotions, which are great, appreciate internal promotions, but when we have an internal promotion, we create a cascade of vacant positions down below. Are we coming up with strategies to make sure that we don't have a seriatim filling of positions, which does not improves the lives of some people, but it creates other vacancies and takes so much time for us to get back to just a net zero? Are we working on that issue?
Yeah, in two different steps, I guess. The first one is when we talk to departments about which exams we open, we strategically open up in a series. To give you an example, for planning department, we just opened up senior city planner, so we know people are going to promote. So we also open up the exams below that as well, the feeder classes. We've added classes or exams to our intermittent continuous process. A lot of those are entry level so that we always have essentially a pool of candidates ready to get into those vacancies as candidates promote.
Good, thank you. I'm going to go to just a couple more issues and I'll turn over the mic. The issue of our part-timers. You know, I hear a lot about interim workers and part-time workers, and how do we move folks from part-time to full-time? Are those issues that are on the table in front of the Aspire to Hire group?
Yeah, I'm excited to announce that we've been working with our partners in AFSCME and SEIU to establish a new program, which is a mere copy of the TLH program, but specific to our part-time exempt long-term employees who have been working with the city, who know the job. We recently signed an LOA, which we launched at the beginning of July, this past July, and we've been hosting briefings to describe this program and to get folks to sign up, so that way we can start getting these individuals into full-time positions. It is the same classifications that are part of the TLH program, so this will help alleviate that program as well to give these individuals an opportunity to participate in city employment.
I appreciate it. I think I understand what you just said. I mean, one of the issues with the TLH program, which is excellent, and our part-time workers who are exceptional and have been with us a long time, is that we see the sort of the conflict between bringing people in positions where, through the TLH, which is great, but could we move people from part-time to full-time should that meet their goals in their career? And so are you telling me we're addressing that issue and creating a pathway for part-timers to be full-time?
Correct. We've addressed it through this new letter of agreement with SEIU and AFSCME. They could transition from part-time exempt to full-time employment, and classifications again that are in the TLH program, such as admin clerk, gardener, caretaker. They are on the same time frame in terms of transitioning. The on-the-job training period, 6 months, followed by a 6-month probationary period. Their civil service job or exam, forgive me, on that is their performance exam during the first 6 months. So it mirrors that program, but it will allow these long-term part-time exempt to now convert to full-time civil service employment.
And what about intermittent workers who have not hit the numbers to get Mr. Harlan? I might ask you to be quiet and allow us to do public business. Intermittent employees who don't hit that number to get benefits.
So the intermittent employees would also be covered under this program as long as they are they were hired before June 30th, 2022, and have a cumulative amount of 2,080 hours in a targeted class. But that would also include intermittent exempt and other individuals who are actively on city payroll.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question that is more of I want you to think about this, and if my members agree, to come back with a report. And it gets into the sensitive and important issue of civil service. I know we have a number of civil service rules which are appropriately codified in the charter. And I just want to know if there's a joint labor management process for us to take a look at some of those civil service rules that have the effect of slowing down hiring and create impediments to, careers, whether or not we could have a report to take a look at some of those. But again, it needs to be a joint labor management process, and I would just want to see the report and see if there are legislative proposals that we could consider. I think I hit an important topic.
Hey. Good morning, members.
This is coming from a board, I think, who all are really, really, really committed to making sure that we're protecting workers with the civil service system.
Absolutely. I wanted to come up here because, first of all, I wanted to meet our new council member. Hello, ma'am. I'm Dana Brown. I am the general manager of the personnel department, the most sought after job in the city. I'm sure everybody wants to have it. But I wanted to, for the benefit of this committee, to try to put some things into perspective, just kind of as you consider some of the ways that you might be able to support our efforts. So first and foremost, our vacancy rate is only as good as the information that is in Workday.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, as you know, we are continuing to configure Workday. So the effort to become you sort of masters of that system is still underway. So we do have a little ways to go in ensuring that positions are appropriately added and or frozen when necessary, so that our vacancy rate can be as accurate as possible. I wanted to call to your attention, for example, the airport's vacancy rate. And the reason that I bring it up is, for one thing, it's a part of this vacancy rate. And so it matters, how they sort of show up in Workday. But the airport is not sort of managed in the same way in terms of their positions, right? Once they are allocated, the airport keeps their positions so that they can use them as they see fit and when they see fit. And a particular example, and I hope, Mr. Urbachi, I absolutely, understand his, responsibility and right to manage his positions the way I have, because I haven't talked to him yet.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, though, there is a class at the airport called Airport Guide. Many years ago, the Airport Guide program was a robust program that had a number of people in and around the airport that provided, support to passengers in various languages and so forth. Well, based on the current allocations and vacancy rate, it suggests that there may be, revamping that program and going to be handling that program a little bit differently, because there are about 145 airport guide positions and only like 3 or 4 of them are filled. So it sort of suggests that maybe they are phasing this program out or doing something different with the program. But that 95% vacancy rate in that class impacts our overall vacancy rate. And the personnel department does not have the ability to go into Workday and eliminate those positions. And maybe it's not even appropriate to do so, because maybe the airport is going to be doing something with them. But I think that it's important for departments like the airport, like the harbor, even Rec and Parks to some degree, have more control over their sort of deployment than the council control departments, where the CAO has a more direct oversight over the positions that are in the system, when they're filled, if they're filled, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to kind of have that in perspective. I also want to say that over one of the things that we've done since I've been here is my system staff has put together this hiring dashboard which is where that vacancy information that we report comes from. And as we have augmented that report and added various fields, gender, and all of these different, very useful tools, then the link for that changes. So I want to invite all of this board to have to have that link so that you can, see in real time, because it's very much real time. It's a snapshot in time because every night it updates. So I'll have my staff forward you all a link so that you can kind of move through the system. There is, I mean, just wonderful information. Like, for example, we talked a little bit about how affecting the vacancy rate in the citywide would require us to bring people into city employment, right? So you can see that last year we hired 9,000 people, but 7,000 of the hires were promotions. Only 2,000 people came into city employment. And so it is hiring into those open classes that's really going to get us moving. So if we hire 400 management analysts, well, before, if we hired 400 management analysts, that meant that 400 something else would have been vacant, right? Because it was promotional only. But one of the wins that we have achieved with our labor partners is an open and promotional test for management analysts, of which Steve and his group have administered, and they are now in the process of setting up the oral interviews. I will say, just for perspective, normally there are about 300 people on that list. This time there will be over 1,500. So, so you know, just different things that we have to sort of attack it from different places, much as you have indicated, and we have had wonderful support from our labor partners, from the Office of the City Attorney, and everybody who really understands the need for the city to move forward with inviting more people into city employment and finding ways to do that.
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. With that, we're still on item 12, and I will turn to my vice chair, see if you have questions or comments.
No questions.
Thank you.
You asked very good questions for us.
And no questions. I just want to say I'm very happy to hear that throughout a lot of these processes and challenges that the city is facing, that that we're partnering with our labor partners. That they're signing those agreements, that they're being brought to the table. That makes me very happy, and that's it. Just thank you for all the work.
Thank you. I also wanted to just say, I wanted to speak to the part-time situation. We definitely have a need for part-time employees in the city. In many departments, part-time employees provide, that the days off, the 2 days off a week that, full-time employees need, because we have these 24-hour operations, the LA Zoo, Animal Services. Those are the types of places that really rely on their part-time services. That said, we're really excited about, though, the opportunity for part-time employees who have been long-term, sort of tenured. So it takes a couple years in order to be able to accumulate. It takes 2 to 3 years to be able to accumulate the number of hours necessary to do the transition if you are an intermittent employee. And so we're really excited about that opportunity to give them the full-time jobs that they have trained for so many years. But that is going to create a need to hire more part-time employees. And so I am going to be working with a number of your council districts, a number of programs that, particularly with EWDD and some of the things that they're doing. We want to be able to partner to try to fill those positions with part-time employees that will eventually be able to transition into full-time employment. How long is our agreement? Is till 2026. So so anybody who we hire between now and 2026 could qualify. Is that so? Or it ends in 26?
It ends in 26.
I see. Okay. Pardon me. So then so those people who we hire, because you could possibly qualify in 2 years if you are working, like a half-time schedule. Still exempt, though, and we won't go into that because we'll be here all night trying to figure out the difference between half-time exempt and half-time civil service. But anyway, so we welcome the opportunity to refill those part-time positions, rec and parks, those places, with people who are going to be able to eventually transition. And there's also the opportunity, if this works out, to renew those agreements because they worked out so well this time.
Great, thank you. I think Councilmember Padilla has a question now.
Yes, so a few things. Just I wanted to invite you to definitely come out to my office. We'd be more than happy to work with outreach with you, as it is to getting more people in the door. And now that you mentioned Park and Recs, kind of got my juices flowing. And I'm curious, of these part-timers, do you have any kind of intentionality or kind of a vision related to hiring part-time youth? And how does that play a role into all of your vacancies?
Well, so I mean, we're certainly open to, whatever programs. I'm not sure exactly what's available, but when you bring up Rec and Parks, I do think about some of their summer programs, that where they do hire young people who are off for the summer and that sort of thing. So we can certainly partner with Mr. Kim and see, what positions he has that would fall into something appropriate for youth. The other thing is when I think of Rec and Parks, and particularly this this part-time to full-time agreement, I do expect for a lot of those gardener caretaker positions to be filled, because I know that Mr. Kim was interested in transitioning his longtime part-time employees into those full-time positions. So, but again, then we're going to need to fill the part-time positions, and that's something that if we'll work with Rec and Parks in order to do that, to make sure that they have what they need.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Coming back to my request for a report on civil service provisions that may be considered for amendment or whatever to improve the hiring process. That's something we can come back with?
Absolutely. Part of the work that we're doing with our hiring working group is looking at what we consider to be low-hanging fruit. And the reason that we call it low-hanging fruit is because it's not something that is, by the vote of the people, right? It's not a part of the charter. So those civil service rules and or personnel practices and policies that we control, we are talking about, how to expedite the hiring process by making changes, where appropriate. The other thing is we are also working with the CAO's office to just kind of start the conversation about the places in the charter that affect hiring, so that we can sort of take a look at that holistically as a city when we get to a place where we're ready to look at the charter.
Great. And that should be coming shortly. If there's no other questions, then I'm going to just change the recommendation and move that we receive and file the report and instruct the department, thank you, to report back in 60 days on major obstacles to hiring that might be addressed to expedite hiring, including potential changes to civil service rules, whether it's in charter or other rules held elsewhere in our body of law.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a second on that? Okay, that's
Second.
made and seconded. Can you call the roll?
Councilmember Gosker?
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez? Yes.
Thank you very much. So that segues us right into 16, where we're going to talk about vacancy rate.
Okay, here I am.
I know we've gotten there and they're all related, but Mr. Clerk, if you could read 16 into the record.
Item 16, Personnel Department report relative to vacancy rate in city departments.
Great. We have the personnel department here. Appreciate you very much. You want to give us just a brief report on item 16?
Yes, I actually, kind of when I came up here, I guess I was a little ahead of the gun, right?
That's
so,
perfect.
Just kind of, wanted to, as I said, the workday vacancy report is a snapshot in time at the time that we do this, that we pull the information. This particular report does not include the council or the mayor's office because again, those offices, much like the airport, the CAO doesn't control the position count the same way, but it does still impact our vacancy rate. Also, it's important to know that the Department of Water and Power is not a part of this vacancy report. We do not currently have them as a part of our position control, so they're not a part of that. But I think that, what we wanted to do was kind of, like I said, show the snapshot so that we can kind of see some of the areas that, that need to be targeted, if you
Mhm,
will.
mhm.
I think that what would be great is if we were comparing this from last year, if I'm being honest, right, so that we can sort of talk about how far we've gotten with the things that we have put into place. But I think that I agree with my staff when I say that there are so many things that we have put into play that has certainly hired or filled more vacancies, but filling more vacancies is only half of it. The other piece of it is filling vacancies with people who do not already work for the city, inviting more people into city service, because that's what's going to ultimately change the vacancy rate. So I think we're working with the CAO. I have Melissa Velasco here with me, who's one of my favorite CAO people. I have to say, I love working with her. And now that the budget has been adopted and we are moving into the budget year, that creates a need to add more positions into Workday. So likely our vacancy rate is higher than what we see here because all of the positions for the upcoming budget have not been loaded.
Right.
We are making some adjustments at the personnel department where if we see that a position has been allocated, we are allowing departments to start the filling process, but ultimately the position has to be in Workday for us to be able to place the person in the seat. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is that the process by which we onboard employees is a little bit laborious with our new HR system, and I believe that as we continue to move forward in mastering, right? So once we finish building, because that's part of the issue, right? We are building for a long period of time, and so while you're building, the people who know most about the system are not really available to help train us. Instead, they are still building. But as we finish our build and as we go live, we will, turn ourselves into masters of this system, and we will be able to do things more quickly. One of the many, upsides of what HRP will bring us is the ability to actually do things faster. But currently, we've not been able to take full advantage of that, particular benefit, as we continue to learn the system.
Okay. So thank you very much for that. So based on what you just said, maybe it makes sense for us to also break this, to aggregate those departments over which we have position control. And so that would give us a chance to separate out the proprietaries. Still have the information, but look at what our rate is where we have position control. And I guess it would also make sense, and tell me if this is true, whether we should break it out between special funded positions and general funded positions, or does that matter for hiring?
I don't think that matters for hiring. Do you think that matters?
Melissa Velasco with the CAO. Departments prioritize hiring, right, based on the need of the department. In a lot of situations, they do prioritize hiring special funded positions because they have those funds readily available that they need to spend for projects. But I'm not sure for the purpose of a vacancy rate if that would be necessary. But it is information that we have available on Workday now. And just to provide a little context for some of our newer council members, the fact that we were able to provide
you, of which this entire body is.
The fact that we were able to provide you effectively a printout out of Workday that says these are the vacancies in our city is a monumental effort, which I think seems relatively silly maybe to people coming in. Our previous payroll system simply had a list of people that were employed, right? So this person was hired in a city department. It in no way correlated to what position they were in. So we had, outside of any system, a list of positions that included regular positions, resolution authorities, substitute authorities, and separately a list of people that were employed. The fact that we have now married those two things and said Melissa Velasco is sitting in a position that's a chief administrative analyst position that's funded by the general fund and is a regular authority position is mind-blowing to those of us who work in this world. And so this is a great effort. We're still making strides to ensure the accuracy of that data, update it, because we've only been in this place for about a year now to actually having that information available. But I just wanted to point that out, that I know this may seem relatively simplistic, but this has been a long time coming for us to get to a place where we can do this.
Maybe I'll make another suggestion before I turn the mic over. I'm going to actually ask that we hold this over and hear this again in committee before we send it up to full council. Maybe it makes sense to get this report broken out, as I said before, as you suggested, I think, with our, where we have control, you know, where we have position control, and that could be where, whatever the source of funds are, and break out the proprietaries, which I think is probably the only other area, but you'll tell us. And then I think also going on something that you said, Ms. Brown, it probably makes sense, and I don't want to create a bunch of, I do want to create new work, but I don't want to make it ridiculous. If we could get sort of a comparative number, like where were we last year? And I don't know if that's available, but I want to come up with a way where we kind of get the trajectory. Where are we going with this number? Because 17 looks bad, but if it was 21 last year or 6 months ago, that's great. We just want to know where the trend is going. And so I would actually defer to you, maybe ask you right now, if a year ago makes sense, 6 months ago makes sense. I realize it's probably complicated by our transition to Workday.
I think that, you know, to be the fairest comparison would be at this time a year ago. And I do think that our system goes back that far. We built it from July 1 of last year.
Yep.
So I think that I can get that information.
Okay.
Is Gracie here? We can. Yeah.
All right. Madam Vice Chair.
Well, I'm excited to see how excited you are to potentially someday be what did you call it, the masters of the system. It sounds like you're really having a moment with it, so that's great. But I'm curious to know, you mentioned that it's a matter of getting the information in there. So what are your obstacles? What can we potentially do to help you expedite getting the information in there so that then you continue to have this ease of report back?
I would say it's just time and expertise.
Okay.
Right. And we're working on that. I think that it may be necessary. I mean, there are certainly, you know, contractors that could help us, but for now we are trying to learn it ourselves, and so it's just a matter of time and expertise, because the people with the expertise are still configuring, so they don't have the time. And so we're kind of doing it a little bit slower. You know, when I talk to my colleagues, some of them say, "Oh, I already have my new positions in the system." Others say, "Oh, mine are not in there yet." And so it's just a matter of, you know, having the people having the time, the right people having the time to go in there and upload. So we're working on it though.
So it's different by department. It's different by individuals that get you the information in time to insert it. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
No, nothing else?
I have a couple questions.
go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you so much for jumping in, Ms. Brown. As Tim calls, Councilman McCosker calls you. But I want to sort of, I was looking at this yesterday, and it's all over the place, right? Some folks are doing really well, and some folks are doing pretty terrible. But in particularly, CIFD is a department over 100 people, and they have a vacancy rate of 9.9. It's the only department in single digits that's that big. What are they doing that perhaps other departments can learn from?
Well, so do you know Abby?
I do know Abby, yeah.
Something else. No, no, I'm kidding. I think that, you know, I think that, and I don't want to, because hey, I'm somebody who's not at 9%, so I definitely
You're pretty good though. You're 11%.
But I think that Abby has prioritized that in such a way. She has worked so closely with her HR liaisons and have told them that this is my priority, and I need to get these positions filled in order to do the job. And so that has been the focus of that HR team. Abby has had some difficulty with recruitment though, and so she spent quite a bit of time working with us on recruitment strategies, retention strategies once she gets people in. And so it's just becomes for her, you know, one of her main focuses, and so it shows in the numbers.
So just prioritizing, right?
It's prioritizing in that way, yes. And maybe her, you know, her ability to do, you know, what's required of her is more severely hampered than maybe some other departments who are, you know, getting the bulk of what they need to get done, you know, while still trying to struggle with vacancies. But I know that that has been something that I have talked to Abby over and over again because she has prioritized it in such a way.
Yeah. Do you talk to her the most of the gyms like about this issue?
Yeah,
No, I'm
I
just
don't.
saying because
Well,
that's probably what's happening.
no, so now I don't talk. I used to, right?
Take
When
care of the
her
issue.
vacancy rate was 18%. And so now not as much.
Okay. I want to go now to the more sort of disgraceful numbers, and that's, I hate to do this, but EWDD, it's like I think the highest.
Yeah.
So
God bless her.
what do you think we need to do to improve their
So
numbers?
I think that the open management analyst list is going to be very helpful for Carolyn. She has had a difficult time recruiting people, with the appropriate skill set into doing the work that she needs. Using them, and we've had there's lots of sort of theoretical conversations about this, about whether or not she should be using the management analyst class or not. What the people who are on the management analyst list, and this is before we did an open exam, but people who are on the management analyst list, what are they trying to do, or what are they trying to get to? They are not, in some cases, not interested in doing that kind of specialized work that Carolyn has available for them. They want to be more global so that they can move on to the next thing. And so, having an open list is something that's going to be very helpful to EWDD, because she's going to be able to get people from outside of the city who have that, background and that sort of community background that she's interested in, who want to do that type of work. So we're looking forward to having the new list support Carolyn.
So it sounds like there's something in motion to.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I wanted to say, just we also have to celebrate the victories. When I took office, the vacancy rate was over 20%. It's now at 19%, so we're making some progress.
What's the difference?
It's progress. I'm happy with it. As long as we're moving, that's what I want to say.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to request that we continue this item. We'll hold it here and direct the CIO and the personnel department to report back with some additional information at the next available meeting. And we'll work with you on the scheduling of that, including breaking it down between those departments we have control over. I'm going to ask you to break down the vacancies by positions as well. And we'll work with you again on that. And we'll reschedule it, I hope, for our next regular meeting. Would that work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. If that's okay with, there's
That's
no
fine.
objection, then we'll call the roll.
Agreed. Councilmember McOsker,
Yes.
Councilmember Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Very full agenda. We're going to call item 13, and I'm going to apologize in advance. I mean, this is a quarterly report from the Controller's Office. I'm sorry. I will endeavor to put you at the top of the agenda for future meetings. I appreciate you wading through this, but I know you're a partner with us on all of these issues. So I thank you for being here, Mr. Cole, and I will ask you to go right ahead, and if you can just give us an update, and then we can kind of work through how we do this on a quarterly basis. Looking forward to partnering with you. Oh, first we'll read it into the record before you go.
Very good. Motion, McOsker Robin, relative to reporting on the status of the controller's activities, inclusive of performance assessments and audits being conducted, as well as any relevant updates related to control function.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to the newest member of the council. We look forward to working with you and your colleagues. I'm Rick Cole, Chief Deputy Controller, with my colleague
Sergio Perez, Chief of Accountability and Oversight.
I think actually where I would like to dive in for the moment is we have just completed gathering data from all of the departments on vacancy rates. And they, as Dana Brown acknowledged, differ from the ones that are in Workday. Not dramatically, but it does show that there are challenges with tracking this data. We came up with a citywide average of 17.9. But one of the things that's really critical there is that many of the departments that have a higher than average vacancy rate are ones that deliver vital services to the community, frontline services, and many of those that have a higher than average vacancy rate are the ones that support the city, the back office functions. And before we dive into more substantive discussion of what the controller's office is up to, I think it's important for the committee to consider the downstream unintended consequences, which you referenced, Mr. Chairman, which is the cascading. The cascading is not just simply a problem of then filling the subsequent vacancies and the time lag. There's also a dramatic impact on the efficiency of the organization to have someone go from one department to a new department to learn a new job and have to wait months to get someone new on board to replace them and then train them in the job responsibilities of a person who's been gone 2 or 3 or 4 months and their colleagues have had to fill in for them, and the citywide failure to train its workforce is creating huge challenges for errors, omissions that are not the fault of the people who are working in our city. But we have systematically underinvested in training our workforce, which is a disastrous combination with a civil service system. If you're going to promote your own people, you need to prepare them for the challenges that they are going to pursue. And our failure to do that across the board is having a huge efficiency impact even when jobs are filled. So I think we have to take a holistic approach to this. It's not just putting a person in a job, it's helping them with the personal and career development to succeed in that job and to minimize some of this churn where people are moving from department to department, job to job, and having this huge learning curve versus what we just heard from Dana Brown, which is there's some specialized skills. As Sergio will probably mention, you know, we have data on the housing department's investigations into tenant complaints, and the result of, you know, thousands of complaints and 0 prosecutions. Those are specialized skills that require continuity and dedication and the training that is important to actually produce the results that you all pass when you pass laws and policies. So I do hope that you think about this as not just a vacancy problem, but as a workforce effectiveness problem. With that, I'm going to ask Sergio to talk about the audit division. He oversees that function, and then I'd like to talk about HRP if there's time.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, folks. As I mentioned before, my name is Sergio Perez. I'm the Chief of Accountability and Oversight for the Controller's Office. I help oversee the Audit Services Division, which is our civil service team that conducts performance audits and fraud, waste, and abuse investigations. That team is augmented by exempt executive appointees, including our Director of Public Safety, our Director of Homelessness, and our Director of Special Projects, along with myself. So the audits, transparency reports, investigations, assessments, and data tools that our office is currently creating are a joint team effort, with the exception of performance audits, which are conducted solely and directed by our civil service staff. The performance audits that are currently in progress include an assessment of LAPD helicopters, expenses and results related to that program, Pathways to Housing, which seeks to measure the city's success with moving unhoused community members into permanent housing options, Interim Housing Audit, which is assessing the available data and successes in the interim housing space, separate from that first audit, which is focused solely on permanent housing. And finally, a recently launched audit of military equipment used by the LAPD. These are performance audits conducted solely by our civil service staff. The next category I want to highlight for you are transparency reports. Over the last 6 months, issued an animal services transparency report, which highlighted relevant metrics for the public and for the city council and other decision makers related to the practices of the animal services department. This included metrics like euthanasia rates, occupancy rates at each of the city's shelters, and data of that type. As Rick mentioned, we are conducting a transparency review of the housing department, which will seek to bring forward relevant information for folks to be able to track the work of the housing department, both with regarding to its treatment of complaints and other issues. We're likely to launch other transparency reviews and reports in the short future, and we'll make that information public like we do with each of these initiatives. The next category are investigations, and those are investigations conducted by both our executive office and our fraud, waste, and abuse team. The fraud, waste, and abuse team does exactly what the name suggests, which is carries out confidential investigations in response to complaints received. And those complaints can be lodged by both members of the public or city employees related to allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse. We have also launched investigations related to the city's treatment of tree trimming allegations. Most recently, this involved the alleged unpermitted, well, now nearly proven unpermitted tree trimming involving Universal, NBC Universal recently, and also arrests related to unhoused neighbors in Council District 12. And a leaked email related to the LAPD. So we're doing some fact finding in those spaces also. Finally, we are also carrying out assessments related to the Green New Deal and the state of the city's efforts with regards to the Green New Deal and the state of unarmed response in the realm of public safety here at the city, with a focus on the on metrics related to the LAPD's mental evaluation unit and an assessment of other pilot programs here at the city.
This is still in the category of the investigations?
No, these are separate assessments.
Okay,
Yeah?
thank you.
Over the last 7 months, we've also launched several public data tools that are available on the controller website. To create these data tools, we often go to the departments at issue and request information, and then synthesize it, identifying trends, and creating interactive data tools for the people of Los Angeles and for decision makers. Most recently, we launched a data tool related to LAPD arrests, which highlighted certain demographic inequities in those arrests here at the city of Los Angeles. Preceding that, we've also created maps related to 4118 arrests, the budget, and other factors. So those are the broad categories of the both audits and other kinds of assessments that we're carrying out at this time.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'll see if my colleagues have questions, but and if we have a moment, I'd like to talk about payroll.
I just want to thank you for saying that we need to look at this from a workforce efficiency problems, something that I'm going to take into consideration on behalf of the GO committee, and keep up the good work.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Council member.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for putting out the report about the evictions that are happening by district. I was shocked to learn that we had 5,245 eviction filings in 6 months, which is an average of 40 evictions per day. It completely lit a fire under our staff to do something about this issue. I'm particularly interested to hear about your report on the housing department. You know, my staff is sort of at wit's end at how inefficient they are at addressing the needs of tenants. And so when we talk about, you know, all those evictions, this is going to shed a little more light on how terrible they might be at their job. I'm sorry, but that's what I'm getting from my staff. Just got to call it what it is, and see if there's any recommendations of how we can improve that. Because you know, if we're not going to solve tenant issues, eviction issues, we're never going to solve the homelessness issue. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
And with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
there's just three of you here today, but I want to emphasize something that Controller Mejia has emphasized from day one, which is his goal is not to show up or embarrass departments or personnel. His goal is to fix systemic problems. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the lack of training and some of the institutional barriers within our system are more at fault here than any individuals who are doing their best. But we want to fix the systemic problems. Our goal is to work with you, with the mayor, and with the departments to get the services that Los Angeles residents deserve. And that requires, as you know, systemic change.
Thank you. Do you have I realize we are just minutes away from our 10 o'clock meeting, and we are all prompt, all three of us here, to that meeting. Could you give us a minute on Workday?
Well,
if possible.
We are 2 years behind, $44 million over budget, have blown every single deadline on testing, and are now in the final critical phase of what's called parallel testing, in which the system the Workday system and the Pacer system are compared for their results on individuals' pay, and of course the goal is for them to match so that people are accurately paid starting the first payroll period in January. That critical period is the next 10, 11 weeks. If we get a very high passage rate, we will be good to go in January. If we don't, we will have another expensive and embarrassing delay in the implementation of Workday. Let me emphasize, the problem is not with Workday. Workday is a very powerful system used by more than half of the Fortune 500 companies. The problem is twofold. One, we have an extraordinarily complicated payroll system in the city of Los Angeles, and it will be more complicated if you adopt the LA Police Protective League contract, which is still secret, but the terms of which are apparently mind-numbingly complicated, and all of which will have to be programmed into the Workday system. So one is we have a very complicated system that we're trying to fit into a very powerful software. And the second is this has never been effectively managed. We have 4 departments and 5 private sector entities all working very hard to try to make it work, but that is not the way to get an efficient system implemented. But that's all behind us, and we're going to do everything we can to have a success in January.
Thank you very much. And at the head of this conversation, you described the discrepancy between the vacancy rates in your analysis and as we previously heard. I'm just going to make one. I'm going to ask that we receive and file this report, but just make one amendment asking for a report back on the accuracy of the vacancy rates and positions.
We would be happy to participate with the personnel department. We've shared our data with them and our conclusions, and we see them as partners in this. So if you want to invite us back next time as well, we'd be happy to participate.
We will do that.
Mr. Chair, this was a motion pending, so did you want to approve the motion as amended, as you just said?
Let's approve the motion as amended.
Thank you.
That would be the request. If you could call the roll.
Yes, Councilmember Coster?
Yes.
Councilmember Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmember Solomon Martinez?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else on the desk?
Thank you very much, council members.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for a very full agenda that we got through.
I'll drop this back.